Why do people who reject us often come back later? It's a question that lingers in the minds of those who have faced rejection, leaving them wondering why someone who once walked away suddenly decides to return. Rejection is painful. It shakes our sense of worth, triggers self-doubt, and often leaves us searching for answers. When someone chooses to leave, we assume the door is closed for good, yet time and again they reappear as if nothing happened. This cycle creates confusion, stirring emotions that we thought had settled. Some seek closure, others crave understanding, but the most pressing question remains: why? To make sense of this, it's important to step back from our emotions and look at the bigger picture. People return for different reasons. Some realize they made a mistake and regret their decision. Others feel lonely and seek comfort in the familiar. There are those whose egos demand reassurance. They want to know they still have an effect on you. Sometimes it's about power. Leaving and coming back gives them a sense of control. And then there are those who return simply because they're bored, looking for a temporary distraction. But understanding why they return isn't about finding satisfaction in their regret. It's about something deeper, our own emotional resilience. This is where Stoicism offers clarity. It teaches that we cannot control the actions of others, only our response to them. Instead of getting caught up in their motives, we focus on our own growth, learning to detach our self-worth from their decisions. This is not about revenge or proving a point. It's about self-mastery, about reaching a place where their return doesn't disrupt our peace. Rejection is not the end of the story, nor is their return a validation of our worth. The real strength lies in not needing their approval in the first place. Rejection feels personal, but is it really about you? When someone pushes you away, it's easy to blame yourself, wondering what you did wrong or what you lacked. The truth is, rejection often has little to do with the one being rejected, and everything to do with the one doing the rejecting. People turn away for reasons that are rooted in their own fears, doubts, and circumstances. Some fear commitment. They hesitate to invest fully in a connection, worried about the responsibility it brings. Others are unsure of their own emotions, struggling to understand what they truly want. External factors also play a role. Friends, family, or life pressures can make them second-guess their choices. And sometimes, rejection is simply the result of an impulsive decision, driven by a temporary emotional state rather than deep thought. In that moment, they believe walking away is the best option, but time often tells a different story. Then, when the dust settles, they come back. The same person who once turned away now finds a reason to return. But why? Emotional attachment doesn't just disappear overnight. Even after rejecting someone, a part of them remains connected, lingering in the background of their mind. They assume you'll always be there, ready to welcome them back, as if nothing has changed. Time and experience also play a role. Meeting new people or exploring different situations sometimes leads to comparison, making them reevaluate their past choices. The comfort they once took for granted suddenly seems valuable again. Nostalgia plays tricks on the mind, making the past appear better than it was. They remember the warmth, the care, the familiarity, but conveniently forget why they left in the first place. But none of this should shake your sense of self. A Stoic understands that rejection is not a reflection of their worth. It is a decision made by another person based on their own internal struggles. Their return is not a prize, nor is their absence a loss. The only thing within your control is how you respond. Instead of chasing answers or seeking validation, The real strength lies in detaching from external opinions. People will come and go, but inner peace is built on not allowing their actions to dictate your sense of self. When you stop seeking explanations for why they left or why they returned, you free yourself from the cycle of emotional dependence. True power comes from realizing that their choices belong to them. Your peace belongs to you. Rejection is one of the most painful experiences a person can go through. Yet it's also one of the most misunderstood. When someone rejects you, it's natural to assume that it's because of something lacking in you. Maybe you weren't good enough, interesting enough, or worthy enough. But what if rejection isn't actually about you? What if it has more to do with the person making that decision? People reject others for reasons that often have little to do with the one being rejected. Some fear commitment, unsure if they're ready for the responsibilities that come with deeper emotional involvement. Others struggle with their own emotions, confused about what they truly want. Sometimes rejection is influenced by external pressures, friends, family, or circumstances that push someone into a decision they may not have made on their own. And in many cases, rejection happens in the heat of an emotional moment, a reaction to temporary feelings rather than a well-thought-out choice. In those moments, they believe leaving is the right thing to do. But that belief isn't always permanent. Then time passes, and something changes. The same person who once walked away suddenly reappears, as if drawn back by an invisible force. Why? The answer lies in human psychology. Emotional attachment doesn't vanish just because someone decides to leave. Feelings remain, even if they're buried beneath distractions or new experiences. They assume that the door they once closed is still open, that they can return whenever they choose because you'll always be there. Then there's the effect of comparison. When they experience life without you, meeting new people, navigating different situations, they begin to see what they once had in a different light. They may have thought they were moving on to something better, but reality doesn't always match expectations. Nostalgia begins to creep in. The mind has a way of romanticizing the past, filtering out the bad moments and focusing only on the warmth and comfort that once existed. Suddenly, they remember the good times more than the reasons they left, and they start to wonder if they made a mistake. But this cycle, rejection, return, repeat, can only affect you if you let it. From a Stoic perspective, rejection is not a personal failure. It's simply another person making a choice based on their own internal struggles. Their fears, their doubts, their external influences, none of it is a reflection of your worth. And when they return, it's not a victory, nor is it proof that you were right all along. It's simply them responding to their own emotions, just as they did when they left. The key to emotional resilience is recognizing that the only thing within your control is how you respond. Seeking validation from those who once rejected you only keeps you trapped in a cycle of dependence. True strength lies in detaching from the opinions and actions of others, understanding that people will come and go, but your peace should never be in their hands. When you stop waiting for answers, stop wondering why they left or why they returned, you free yourself. Their choices belong to them. Your peace belongs to you. There's something fascinating about how people seem to reappear when you finally moved on. It's almost as if the moment you stop thinking about them, they start thinking about you. But why? More often than not, it's about ego. When someone rejects you, they assume that you'll always remain in the same place they left you. But time changes people. The pain of rejection often pushes you toward growth, whether it's improving yourself emotionally, mentally, or even physically. You become stronger, wiser, more self-assured. And when that transformation becomes visible, the one who left suddenly starts to take notice. They may not even be conscious of it, but something shifts in their perception. The person they once dismissed now seems more valuable, more attractive, more out of reach. And for some, that realization isn't about genuine admiration, it's about power. Ego-driven returns often follow a similar pattern. Someone who once had control over the situation begins to sense that their influence is fading. They wonder if they still have a hold over you, if a single message or a sudden appearance can bring you back to where you once were. Waiting, hoping, still affected by their presence. This is why many people don't return with sincere intentions, but as a test. They want to know if you've really moved on or if they can still pull you back with minimal effort. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just human nature. We crave validation, and knowing that someone still wants us feeds the ego. But the danger lies in mistaking their return for something deeper, when in reality, it's often just a reaction to a loss of control. Power dynamics play a huge role in why rejection and return feel so emotionally intense. When someone rejects you, they hold the power. They make the decision, they walk away, and you're left dealing with the aftermath. But power isn't permanent. It shifts the moment you stop reacting, when you refuse to let their presence dictate your emotions. The more unaffected you are, the more that control slips from their hands. Many people don't expect the ones they leave to grow without them. They assume they will always be wanted, always have the option to return. But when you show them otherwise, when their presence or absence no longer defines your peace, that's when the balance shifts. The real test is recognizing this dynamic and not allowing it to pull you back into a situation that no longer serves you. From a Stoic perspective, true power isn't about control over others, but mastery over yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of remaining steady, unaffected by either praise or criticism. External opinions, whether they lift you up or tear you down, are fleeting and unreliable. They come and go based on emotions, circumstances, and personal biases. A Stoic learns to detach from the need for validation, whether it's from admiration or rejection. The key is to see these returns for what they are, expressions of someone else's internal conflicts, not proof of your worth. Your value was never determined by their acceptance or their absence. It was always within you, independent of anyone else's recognition. When you truly grasp that, no one's return can shake your peace, and no one's rejection can define your self-worth. Regret has a way of creeping in when people least expect it. At first, leaving may have felt like the right decision. Maybe they thought they could do better, or maybe they assumed life without you would bring them something new, something more exciting. But reality often doesn't match expectations. The idea that the grass is greener on the other side is a comforting thought until someone actually steps over and realizes it's not what they imagined. And once that realization sets in, regret follows. They start to question their choices, wondering if they made a mistake. But is it truly about missing you? Or is it about missing what you provided? Stability, affection, or even just the feeling of being wanted? Nostalgia plays a powerful role in why people return. Memory is selective. It doesn't record events exactly as they happened. Instead, it filters out the discomfort, the arguments, the reasons they walked away, and highlights only the good moments. They remember the laughter, the warmth, the familiarity, and as time passes, the negative aspects of the relationship fade into the background, making the past seem better than it actually was. This is why many people who leave eventually start to rethink their decision. The life they imagined for themselves didn't turn out as planned, and now they're left reminiscing about what once was. But nostalgia is often an illusion. It's not about you as a person. It's about them longing for a feeling they once had, even if they were the ones who let it go. Fear of missing out makes this even stronger. Social media has made it easy for people to keep an eye on those they've left behind, even from a distance. Seeing you happy, progressing, and moving forward without them can trigger an unexpected reaction. They may have walked away thinking you would always be there, but the moment they see you thriving, it challenges their assumptions. The mind starts playing tricks. If you're doing well without them, does that mean they made the wrong choice? If someone else now values you in a way they didn't, does that mean they lost something precious? But the reality is, their return isn't always about love or realization. Sometimes, it's just the discomfort of seeing someone move on when they thought they had the upper hand. It's not always about wanting you back. It's about not wanting to feel like they lost something irreplaceable. From a Stoic perspective, regret and fear of missing out are distractions from the present moment. What's done is done, and dwelling on the past serves no purpose. Marcus Aurelius spoke about the impermanence of all things. Everything in life is temporary, borrowed for a time, and eventually lost. Clinging to the past, whether it's a mistake you made or a decision someone else regrets, only prevents you from living fully in the present. Their feelings of regret, their fear of missing out, their sudden realization of your worth. None of these are your burdens to carry. You are not responsible for someone else's fears, nor should their return be seen as proof of your value. True peace comes from knowing that your worth was never dependent on their presence or absence. What matters is not whether they come back, but whether you allow their return to disrupt the peace you built in their absence. Love and loss are two sides of the same coin. When we form attachments, we rarely think about the possibility of losing what we cherish. But nothing in life is permanent. People change, circumstances shift, and the feelings that once seemed unshakable can fade without warning. The more we resist this truth, the more we suffer. Placing emotional dependence on someone else, believing that our happiness or sense of self is tied to their presence, creates a fragile existence. When they leave or circumstances force them away, it feels as though a part of us has been ripped away. But was it really them we lost? Or was it the illusion that they would always be there? There's a difference between healthy attachment and emotional reliance. A true connection allows two people to grow together while remaining whole individuals. It brings joy, companionship, and support, but it does not create dependency. Unhealthy attachment, on the other hand, leads to fear of loss, fear of change, fear of being alone. It makes one person responsible for another's emotional stability, which is neither fair nor sustainable. Stoicism does not teach people to avoid love or connection. It does not advocate for coldness or indifference. Instead, it teaches emotional stability. To care deeply without being ruled by attachment, to love without possession, to appreciate without clinging. The Stoics understood that suffering comes from resistance to reality. Seneca wrote about loss and change as natural forces in life, something to accept rather than fear. He reminded us that everything we have is borrowed, even the people we love. Clinging to someone with the hope that they will never leave is like trying to hold on to water in a closed fist. The tighter the grip, the more it slips away. But if we learn to appreciate without attachment, we find peace. We can love without fear. We can lose without breaking. This does not mean we do not grieve or feel pain, but we do not let it consume us. One of the most powerful Stoic principles is amor fati, the love of fate. It is the practice of accepting life as it unfolds, without resistance or resentment. Instead of asking why something happened or wishing it were different, Stoicism teaches us to embrace what is. If someone leaves, it is not a personal failure. It is simply the nature of life. If circumstances change, it is not an injustice. It is part of the flow of existence. Amor fati is about surrendering to the reality that everything comes and goes. Nothing is truly ours, and that is okay. True strength comes from this acceptance, from understanding that our happiness is not dependent on anything outside of ourselves. When someone returns after leaving, the question is not whether they have changed or whether they regret their choice. The real question is whether we have grown to a point where their return no longer determines our peace. Detachment does not mean shutting ourselves off from love, nor does it mean avoiding relationships. It means finding balance, loving fully, but never losing ourselves in that love, holding on to people lightly, allowing them the freedom to stay or go, without letting their presence or absence dictate our sense of worth. This is where true emotional resilience is found, not in controlling what happens, but in mastering how we respond. When someone who once rejected you suddenly returns, it's natural to feel a rush of emotions, validation, confusion, even a sense of victory. But before reacting, take a step back. Why do you feel the way you do? Is it because you truly want them back, or is your ego enjoying the fact that they now realize what they lost? The worst thing you can do in this moment is make an impulsive decision based on emotions. Instead, respond with logic. Give yourself time to think. Distance yourself from the initial excitement or resentment and ask the important questions. Do you genuinely want this person back in your life? Or does the idea of them returning feed a sense of pride? Are they coming back because they now see your true value? Or are they just seeking comfort, validation, or control? People return for different reasons, but not all of them are good. Some realize their mistake and genuinely want to make amends. Others return because they feel lonely, because their other options didn't work out, or because they assume you will always be there. It is important to evaluate their intentions carefully. Are they taking responsibility for the way they left? Do their actions show that they have grown, or are they simply saying what they think you want to hear? Genuine change is reflected in consistent behavior, not just in words. If someone returns and still avoids accountability, makes vague promises, or tries to shift blame, they are likely acting out of convenience rather than true change. A Stoic approach to handling their return means keeping emotions in check. Whether you accept them back or not, your response should come from a place of self-respect, not desperation. If you choose to reconnect, do so because it aligns with your values, not because of pressure or fleeting emotions. If you decide to move on, do so with grace, without bitterness, without resentment, without the need to prove anything. Holding on to anger or using their return as a chance to get even only keeps you emotionally tied to the past. True power is found in control over yourself, not in trying to control or punish others. One of the greatest Stoic lessons is the power of indifference. Epictetus taught that external events should not disturb our inner peace. The fact that someone left or returned should not define your emotional state. The best response is not to seek revenge, nor to desperately hold on to them, but to simply continue living your life with purpose. If you are thriving without them, their return should not change that. Silence and indifference are sometimes the strongest answers. When you no longer need to prove anything, when their presence or absence no longer determines your happiness, you have already won. When someone who once walked away comes back, it's easy to assume that their return is a reflection of your worth. But the truth is, their decision has more to do with them than with you. People return for their own reasons, whether it's regret, loneliness, nostalgia, or even a desire to regain control. But none of that defines you. Your value was never dependent on their presence, and their return does not suddenly validate your worth. The moment you realize this, the power dynamic shifts. You are no longer at the mercy of their choices. You are in control of your own. Stoicism teaches that external events, whether someone leaves, returns, praises you, or criticizes you, are beyond your control. The only thing you can govern is your response. If you allow their actions to dictate your emotions, you remain trapped in a cycle of dependency. But if you master your reactions, you become untouchable. You are not here to seek validation from those who are unsure about you. You are not here to prove anything to someone who once walked away. You are here to live your life on your own terms, without needing anyone's approval. True power lies in emotional self-mastery. Whether they come back or not, your happiness remains unchanged. You do not lose yourself in their absence, nor do you become consumed by their return. When you reach this state, you are free, not just from them, but from the need to be chosen. You no longer chase, you no longer wait, and you no longer place your peace in the hands of another. The only approval you ever needed was your own.